I got into the Dragon Quest franchise right around the time Persona 5 released in the West, which means I've been a Dragon Quest fan for almost a decade now. Like many of you can probably relate when you're first getting into a game series, those first 4 or 5 games hit the hardest. I've been chasing the high of Dragon Quest 3, 4, 5, and 8 for many years now. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Dragon Quest XI and the HD 2D remakes we've been getting. DQ3 HD 2D is in my personal top 5 games of the franchise, and I did think last year's 1+2 HD 2D were fun, but overall imbalanced. The remake of Dragon Quest I just didn't feel properly balanced for that game's uniquely solitary protagonist. Dragon Quest II was by far the better of the two games, but I still ran into moments of frustrating difficulty spikes, and this is coming from a guy who loves grinding in JRPGs. After playing roughly 20 hours of the 3DS remake of Dragon Quest VII and 10 hours of the PlayStation original, I dropped the game twice. But the game has always lingered in my mind. Dragon Quest VII is the first game in the series to not feature muscular warriors as the band of heroes. Instead, you simply play as a group of children from a small town who dream of adventure. Unfortunately, Dragon Quest VII was one of those games that just begged you to have a strategy guide, and the 3DS version was better in that regard, but still suffered from some pacing issues and choppy visuals. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined seeks to amend all issues with this grand tale, and as proudly declared in the title, this isn't really just a remake, it's a reimagining. For a series that's 40 years old, you would think that there would be more than just 6 mainline games that use 3D graphics. Luckily, 7 Reimagined is the 6th game in that bunch. The game goes for a sort of toys-to-life aesthetic, where the characters almost seem like animated action figures. Luckily, this doesn't come off as creepy or weird, except in the case of Kiefer, who many people claim looks like Matt Damon from Team America.
Matt Damon! Matt Damon! Matt Damon! Matt Damon!
And I kind of agree with that. There's specific instances of beautiful detail, like the texture on the protagonist's hat and wooden houses. The lighting is different in both the past and present. The past is shown as faded, slightly brown, and muted. The present is much brighter and therefore happier feeling. I love the way sunlight bounces off the bodies of water in this game. But I think I love the way this game looks most in battles. Seeing these classic Akira Toriyama designs encapsulated in 3D models just feels so pleasing to my eyes. And again, this isn't a very common occurrence. Other than the PlayStation 2 remake of Dragon Quest V, Dragon Quest VIII, Dragon Quest IX, Dragon Quest X, and 11, there just aren't many 3D Dragon Quest games. And one of those games I just listed, Dragon Quest X, is an MMO that never left Japan, and another one, Dragon Quest IX, is a DS game, which, the DS wasn't known for the best 3D graphics. So to be honest, there's really not that many games in this series that look this good in 3D. And the music from deceased legend Koichi Sugiyama still holds up quite strong. Yes, I know he's a controversial figure depending on who you talk to, but the truth is the man's music is integral to the Dragon Quest spirit. His compositions here are some of the most iconic within the series, and I find myself playing them in my head over and over again. Maybe it's because I started this game twice and dropped it twice, but this soundtrack has stayed in my head longer than any other Dragon Quest soundtrack except for Dragon Quest VIII. Like with many DQ games, you'll be hearing the same town theme, overworld theme, and battle theme over and over and over and over again. And for some people that gets on their nerves, but for me not so much, and we're lucky that they're this good in this game. This might just be my recency bias or my starvation of 3D Dragon Quest speaking, but I do think this is my favorite presentation in a Dragon Quest game in a very long time. And again, I do want to reiterate that I do love the HD 2D style, but this toy-like atmosphere is just so fitting for Dragon Quest VII in particular. It's the type of JRPG that makes you want to snuggle up with a blanket and some tea or coffee. Now let's get into the gameplay. Believe it or not, this is where Dragon Quest VII was criticized the most during its initial release. It might seem odd when you consider how traditional and arguably repetitive the series is. In the PlayStation 1 original, it took roughly 2 hours to enter your first fight. In this newest version, they cut it down to about 25 minutes. There's also an entire job class system in this game called Vocations. Believe it or not, it took players roughly 20 hours to even begin using the vocation system in both the PlayStation 1 and 3DS version of this game, which, I gotta be honest, that's just genuinely bad design. If an RPG is built around a job system, you want to give players access to it as soon as possible, a la Final Fantasy V or Metaphor ReFantazio. The reason I say this is because Dragon Quest VII Reimagined actually starts you off with some basic vocations, and within a handful of hours you'll have these totally mastered. So you're just going through hours and hours and hours where you're not leveling up any vocations because you've already mastered the basic ones and you haven't gotten to the point in the story where you can unlock the new ones. In fact, I didn't see anybody talk about vocations until my 12th hour in this game, and it wasn't until I was 13 hours into Dragon Quest VII Reimagined that I could begin using the class system. Now, of course, that is much quicker than the previous 2 iterations of this game, but I still think it's a bit of a strange decision. Other than the vocations, Dragon Quest VII features the standard turn-based combat the series has been known for ever since its Famicom debut. And I would argue that the defining feature of Dragon Quest VII is in its stone tablet hunt. In order to proceed in Dragon Quest VII, you need to find different colored stone tablets that unlock the next area. In the original PlayStation 1 version, players could spend hours looking for the next tablet. You see, these incredibly important tablets could be hidden away in any chest or nook and cranny in some random villager's house, and it's just as frustrating as it sounds. While both the PlayStation 1 and 3DS versions had a hint system to try and help players find these tablets, it just wasn't very fun. It would make more sense if bosses dropped these tablets and players could find optional tablets for optional quests hidden within the world. But that's just not how Dragon Quest VII was designed. In this reimagined version, players would honestly have to struggle to not find these tablets. It's much more streamlined and easy to work with. So far, I've only had one instance where I had to explore blindly for a tablet, and it was honestly my fault because I didn't enter a specific town. My biggest piece of advice is just don't be in a rush. Take your time. Enter every house, check out every chest, and keep an eye out for a blue exclamation mark icon. I just found out that there's actually an icon on your mini-map that also tells you if there's a stone tablet nearby. I'm sure some purists will argue that making the tablets too easy to collect kills some of the adventure and wonder of the original game, and I respect that opinion, but I personally don't agree because I don't think the system was implemented very well to begin with. Earlier, I mentioned how Dragon Quest I and II HD 2D felt imbalanced to me. It was mostly in Dragon Quest I, but damn, I've just never really struggled in this series as much as I did in that game. In Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, the game feels actually pretty easy. Now, full disclosure, I did pre-order the special edition, which gave me some decent early game gear, so I'm sure that's where most of my ease comes from. It's only been in the last couple of hours or so of my game time where I've actually gotten to some challenging enemies, but I still haven't died once so far. I know a lot of people will complain about this and say the game is too easy, but there's actually a lot of difficulty settings you can tinker with. If you want, you can make the enemies do more damage, and you can disable some of the quality of life features. Personally, I'm just playing on all the normal settings. As somebody who has played the Dragon Quest games on Super Nintendo and DS, Dragon Quest has come a long way in terms of quality of life features and difficulty. Again, some players may hate this newfound easiness, but I don't fully agree. It's really nice being able to cast Zoom indoors or automatically defeat foes that are far weaker than me. The one thing I do think modern Dragon Quest is screwing up is death. I also noticed this in 1+2 Remake, but with the autosaving and allies reviving upon exiting a battle, death in these games just kind of feels pointless now, which sucks. In the older games, death was something you seriously wanted to avoid because finding an Yggdrasil leaf was extremely hard, and Zing could be unreliable, and your only other chance of reviving a teammate would be going to a church and paying a lot of money to revive your teammates. But you don't really have to worry about any of that in the modern Dragon Quest games. Look, while Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is on the easier side, at least in normal mode, I think it actually adds to the cozy vibe that I mentioned before. As for the story, I actually don't want to say too much right now, because I do find it quite charming. Essentially, you play as a group of children who grew up in a small fishing town. This town is located on a small island in the middle of a vast empty ocean. The people of this island have tried exploring the ocean to find other islands and other people, to no avail. This entire planet is covered in water and only has one small island. You play as the son of a fisherman who is best friends with the local prince, Kiefer. You and Kiefer have a strong desire for adventure. One day, the two of you discover that maybe there actually were more islands in this world. I won't say much more than that right now, but what I do like about the pacing of this game is that it actually kind of feels quite episodic. Instead of one long singular story, you're going through multiple miniature stories, and I find that it gives the game almost a Saturday morning cartoon atmosphere, which I love. I think there's a part of me that actually understands why this game was remade twice. Much like with Dragon Quest V, there's just something about Dragon Quest VII that perfectly encapsulates the spirit of adventure and wonder. I mentioned in the beginning of this review that I have been missing the feeling I had when I beat my first few Dragon Quest games, and after 14 hours, I can safely say that Dragon Quest VII Reimagined has reignited the spark deep inside of me. I am once again feeling that love and wonder towards the series that I did a decade ago. And I'm so glad to say that Dragon Quest VII has just reminded me why I'm such a diehard fan of this franchise. I am hopeful that once I dive deep into the vocation system, that this game could honestly crack my top 3 games in the series. I'm just really hoping that there are no crazy difficulty spikes or any obnoxious stone tablet hunts. I will be back with my final thoughts for this review when I finish this game. Thank you for watching.